Welcome, Barry. Good morning, and thanks again for taking the time to talk to us about what I think is actually quite a fascinating topic.
Oh, thanks, David. Yeah, no, pleased to be here. Yes, a very interesting topic. It's quite good actually going through some of the stuff because we've been working with clients on this particular subject as part of our work. So it's quite topical in interesting times. Right, so we'll fire into it. Before I start, I just thought I'd let you guys know we've been doing a bit of work with clients over the last couple of weeks on a Section 25 request from the FMA. And while it's not this particular subject, I just thought I'd pass on some of our comments about what we've found during that. For those of you who don't know, the Financial Markets Authority Act basically allows the FMA to ask any financial service provider for pretty much any information they like. And it's a legal requirement for financial service providers to be able to respond to that. Some of you may be aware that earlier in the year the FMA did a Section 25 request to all insurers asking a whole lot of information about policies that have been put in force by advisors in the last, since about 2009 I think they went back to. And then they also asked for policies that had been cancelled in that same period. So every insurer in New Zealand provided that information along with commissions and bonuses paid, and also benefits such as trips and soft dollar benefits. They then released a report on that called Replacement Business Report, which had some findings in there where they talked about some of the things they were seeing out of that, I guess, metadata. From that, they've sent out requests 4 weeks ago to advisors to say, we'd like some data from you. Now that data included details about who wrote business under the agencies. It asked for all of the current clients' policies and benefit details, start dates. It then also asked, out of all of those current clients you had, which policies had been moved or replaced other policies, not just inside your data client base, but any other policies they replaced from the marketplace. While advisors were able to pretty much put together who their current clients are, it was actually quite a major task to get to find out whether the policies had replaced another policy. So I guess one of the handy tips we're sort of giving clients now is if you are keeping track of policies or new business you write, I would suggest creating or adding to a database or a spreadsheet details of if it replaced anything. And while the focus is on insurance at the moment, I would suggest that if you're dealing with KiwiSaver or investments or even replacing mortgages, I'd suggest that you start to keep a data point on it so that if you're ever in the future asked which of the policies or products you put in place, did it replace anything, to make it a bit easier to find. As you can imagine, we had to go back to January 2012. So if you thought in your own business of every piece of business you've written since January 2012, how could you find whether it replaced something or not? In most cases, it required going into each actual client file. And having only 4 weeks to respond made it quite a major task, but all the clients we dealt with got there, and we met with the FMA to discuss, what are they looking at. At the moment, they're just trying to figure out the patterns they were seeing and whether it meant anything. Their data was based on lapse rates, and as you know, lapse rates from companies can include policies that have cancelled, benefits that have expired, maybe they ended at age 65. Also policies where had expired due to claims being paid. So while none of the advisors that we discussed or went through it with were being accused of churning, as such the debate at the moment, the FMA is looking obviously at more in-depth data. So yeah, there you go. That's been part of our week, as well as obviously everybody in AFAs completing their annual reports and their AML CFT returns. So a busy compliance time. But let's look on to something probably a bit more interesting, and that, I guess, is the web. So today we're going to look at what it means for a financial advice practice being online, the risks of being on the web. You know, one of the questions we hope that you sort of ask yourselves or get out of this is, you know, how do you also plan your online brand? So everything you do, whether it's as an individual or as a business, obviously affects the brand that you present to the world, and that is the general public, your current clients, your centres of influence, but also the regulator. I mean, the regulator has a business intelligence team, and I know that they do monitor the web. Over the last 5 years, we would have seen probably 6 or 7 requests for information from the FMA to financial services and financial advice businesses with a please explain. One of the most common ones is where category 1 products are mentioned on advisor businesses' websites whereby they're not authorised financial advisors. Another one is about promises made or uses of the word independent. So, and those are things that we're going to discuss today. And then obviously, how do you know, what's a process for managing the content that you do put online from a compliance point of view? So why is this important? Well, I guess today, online really is your new shop front. If you were referred to a client or a client was referred to you, I would imagine one of the first things they would do, and I do this all the time, if I get people ring me and say, hi, so-and-so, want to have a chat, generally during the phone call, I'll open Google and have a look and see who I'm talking to. So whenever you put anything on the web, such as a website or social media, there are obligations as a business and as a financial service provider to get that right. And these days, getting it wrong can be quite costly. We have seen, you know, some firms taken to task over things like, you know, advertising, making statements, and, you know, the Commerce Commission and the Financial Markets Authority are looking out for those things. So, what are the relevant regulations? So for financial advisors, obviously the Financial Advisors Act, it has sections there such as sections 33 and 34, which say, you know, we must not do anything that is deceptive or misleading, and we must show care, diligence and skill in anything we're doing. There are also specific requirements in the Act about advertising, such as letting clients know that a disclosure statement is available free and upon request, and also over the use of the word independent for authorised financial advisors. Then we have the Financial Markets Conduct Act, and Section 2 of that Act applies to all financial service providers, and it covers some of the same ground about not being misleading and deceptive, and also not making, you know, any unauthorised, I guess, or unsubstantiated representations as well. Then we have, as all businesses do, the Fair Trading Act and the Consumer Guarantees Act. Fair Trading Act covers a lot of the same ground in the first two, nothing that's misleading or deceptive, and the Consumer Guarantees Act says that, you know, whatever product or service you provide, you know, must do or be fit for purpose. So we sort of, while it doubles up a lot, it does actually make it a bit of a minefield in the fact that if you were found to be misleading under, for example, the Financial Advisors Act, you could be in breach of the Financial Markets Conduct Act and the Fair Trading Act at the same time. While the Financial Markets and Financial Advisors Act are covered by the Financial Markets Authority, the Fair Trading Act and the Consumer Guarantees Act are covered by the Commerce Commission. I guess where would we, we've also seen that there are specific requirements for financial service providers. Just recently, in the last week or so, the Commerce Commission recommended or passed on to the police, or the Minister did, I think it was, the breach of the KiwiSaver Act for KiwiSaver providers. The Act states that they're not allowed to invest in things like cluster bombs or have investments in those. There was found that there was $40 odd million within the 30 billion that is invested in KiwiSaver, invested in those. The police have decided not to take it any further, but it just shows that, you know, there are teeth to some of these things, and if people decided to have a crack in those authorities, that action might be taken. So, what do the legs and regs actually say? So the first one, which covers us off in 3 of those 4 acts, is don't be misleading. So mislead is to lead astray in action or conduct, to lead in error, or to cause to err. A representation may be literally true, but may still be misleading. So what they're saying there is you could actually say something that's, you know, quite factual, but if you say it the wrong way, then it could be potentially misleading. So an example of that could be, you know, we deal with, you know, or we can provide advice on all leading providers or insurance providers, for example. So there may be, it's inferring that when you give advice, you could potentially place business with any insurer in New Zealand. But then when questioned with advisors, we might find that actually they can't place business with Westpac Life or BNZ Life. So therefore, that while the client thinks that the advisor is able to provide advice, there is actually a bias there because they're not able to place business with those other companies. The same could be said with investment advice. Investment advisors might say that, you know, we don't have any one product provider that we could place your investments anywhere. But if you only use managed funds, then that potentially could be misleading as well. The Financial Markets Conduct Act actually then gets a little bit deeper than the others, and it actually talks about representations for products and services. So you can't be misleading that there's a particular kind or standard or quality of the product or service, or the value. So for example, if I hear radio adverts to say, oh, we can get you the best mortgage rate. Well, it might be the best mortgage rate out of the selection you have available, but is it the best mortgage rate out of the whole market? And also, how would you define best? That's quite subjective. So saying the best or the highest quality or the best rate potentially could be considered misleading. So for example, you know, people saying that they're experts in a particular area, you know, you wouldn't want to be making a comment like that unless you knew that they were experts. I had one recently where they said, oh, we're the fastest growing business or brokerage in mortgage broking. And when I asked how do they know that, they said that because the BDMs told them that they were. I don't know whether that's probably substantiated, and considering that we have a bit of a view of the market, that's probably something you'd probably refrain from saying. So, and that happens across everything. Some of them are around, you know, specific approvals or endorsements or affiliations. So we see a lot of businesses where they will put logos. I know the FMA have pulled people up where people have had and they do this quite a bit now, where they say, oh, we are licensed or registered with the FMA. If you don't actually hold a license, which is unlikely if you're an advisor, just being on a register with the FMA, it implies that you're somehow, you know, you've met some criteria or there's some qualification or competence levels that had to be met to do that. Well, they don't actually like that. So yeah, I guess overall, you've got to be careful about what it is you're actually saying, and anything that you do say, you need to make sure you can back it up, you know, with actual facts. So an example of that very early on when advisors started calling themselves registered financial advisors. We noticed on business cards and on websites, advisors would put RFA after their name in the same way as a qualification. I used to do the same. I used to put QBE behind my name as a designation because I was qualified by experience. It's probably misleading as well. So you're not actually allowed, according to the FMA, to state that you are an RFA because it implies that it's like a professional qualification, whereas actually, in reality, a registered financial advisor is a person who is on a register that states they provide financial advice services. And she's not a high hurdle to jump. It's a criminal check and a joining of a dispute scheme to get to there. So it would be misleading to imply. We have seen cases where I had a client who was an authorised financial advisor, was dealing with a client over some insurance, and when they sat down and he was going through the introduction and engagement process, the client said, "Oh, look, I'm going to have to stop you here. Sorry, I thought you were a registered financial advisor. I want to deal with a registered, not an authorised financial advisor." So that client had somehow got into their head that a registered financial advisor was like a registered master builder, and that was what they were looking for. So which goes some way to identifying why the changes or the proposed changes of the Financial Advisors Act, that we just have a one level, you're either a financial advisor or you're not, and that the requirements, and there are competency standards, and there are code or practice standards that are the same across all financial advisors, no matter what type of advice is, could be a good thing for consumers and advisor businesses alike.
Just to go back to that very quickly.
Yeah, sure.
Just the this was you're right. It was a debate very early on in the introduction of regulation. Where did that end up in terms of what was acceptable practice in terms of notifying consumers that you are registered, and therefore?
Yeah, you are allowed to state, use the word, I am a registered financial advisor. You can, because that is true.
Yeah.
But to use the RFA as a designation after a name is not allowed. Or it's not allowed. Yeah, the FMA consider that potentially misleading.
Yeah.
Our advice has always been to actually the uses of the word authorised and registered to us, it doesn't mean anything, I don't think, to the client. I'd much rather people would say, hey, I'm an insurance advisor, or I'm an investment advisor, or I'm a financial advisor. Use the term that matches your service and potentially means something to the client, rather than using, an industry term or jargon.
And potentially they use the FSPR number as well as a reference. So.
Absolutely, yeah. So people can put the FSPR number on there, but and that's why the disclosure statements were, they were set up that way to say, well, here I am a registered but not authorised financial advisor. I can give you advice about, you add the products you give advice about, and here's 3 ways to complain about me, which was never a great document, and hopefully will change in the future. The second thing that RFAs need to watch out, there are more and more advisors we come across who are offering class advice on KiwiSaver. Now, the FMA advertising section on their website states, and while it does say mortgage advice advertisement, I think you could also insert insurance advice as well. If an advertisement, and take advertisement to mean social media or website that refers to KiwiSaver in such a way that it implies an advisor is authorised to provide personalised financial advice on KiwiSaver, could be misleading. So if you're an RFA who says, hey, we can help out with your KiwiSaver needs, well, you sort of can, but really all you can do is give information on KiwiSaver and hand them a brochure. You can't actually help them with their needs. So wording needs to be really careful about how that is stated on your websites. Also, when giving advice, if a mortgage advisor was giving advice on can I afford a mortgage to a client, if the advisor was to make a recommendation to use the KiwiSaver for the deposit, then that could actually be deemed advice or personalised advice on a Category 1 product. Now that's different from a consumer coming to you saying we have chosen already to use our KiwiSaver as a deposit, then obviously there's no advice. If they ask you, should I use my KiwiSaver, then you're probably crossing the line at that point. So that's an area to watch, and I would suggest KiwiSaver, because the balances are going up, I think we're at an average of about $15,000 balances or whatever it is now, that's only going to get more focus, I think, in the future. So, area to watch. The other side of the legs and regs is obviously the deceptive bit. So, to cause to believe what is false, to mislead as to a matter of a fact or lead into error, to delude or to take in. So pretty straightforward there. Don't tell lies. The other one that's really interesting, when I say really interesting, it's because I'm a compliance guy, probably not interesting to most people, is a representation that is unsubstantiated. So for example, if you say on a website, we deal with ABC company because they have the highest product ratings, that could be a representation that's made. If at the time that representation is made, you don't have evidence or proof that that was the case, then that is an unsubstantiated representation. And even though it might be true, if you didn't have substantive evidence that that was true, you could actually be in breach of the Financial Markets Conduct Act. So what that means is every time you do make a statement like that, or any statements about a product or a service on your website, make sure you do have somewhere in your files or your processes evidence. I can give you an example from a court case we were involved with, where an advisor stated that a product that was recommended rated higher than another product in the past, 2004 or 2009 it might have been, but then when it came in 2000, they will show us the rating. The advisor then provided the ratings for 2012. It didn't actually have the ones from 2009. So therefore, it was probably right at the time, but if they can't prove it, it becomes an unsubstantiated representation. So that's a biggie. We do see lots of statements around, you know, and once again, mortgage advisors with rates, performance of any funds, you'd want to be really careful about stating performance or stating, and you need to make sure it stays up to date as well. So anything you're mentioning about product or services, yeah, you'd want to be double checking to make sure it's right, or have a process for checking and ensuring it's right and recording it as well.
That's an interesting one from the point of view of a website as well. So that at the time the statement is made, or even posted onto the web, a website often doesn't have the date of publication for that particular statement. So how would you, presumably you would need to make sure that statement continued to be accurate over time.
Yeah, and look, I think we're getting to the stage where, you know, and you see it a lot in presentations or in other areas where they reference it. So if they say highest rated product or best product, it then says based on the, you know, QPR ratings as at, you know, such and such a date, or, you know, so you'd want references in there to reference back where that rating came from or where that qualification for that point came from. And I would suggest actually have that on the website. So your little asterisks or notations, or a bit like a bibliography in the back of a book that says, well, here's all the reference points of the statements I've made. Then there's always the interesting one around the word independent, and our advice is to all advisors that if you receive commissions or payments from product providers, don't use the word independent, because it is defined in the Authorised Financial Advisor Code. And while some RFAs say, well, the code doesn't apply to me, there have been other, I guess, rulings, in advertising standards has been one, and in court cases where because it's defined for AFAs, that's actually setting a definition for the marketplace. So while this is a specific to AFA, we then say, well, that would theoretically apply if somebody challenged a registered financial advisor as well, who said we thought they were independent, but actually they receive commissions from product providers. They're not independent. Now, this is a piece of a debate at the moment, because the use of the word independent generally meaning, well, hang on, I've got access to multiple providers, I'm not aligned to one particular provider, and all the providers roughly pay me the same commission, therefore I'm not biased. I guess the point I look at is, the fact is, if you only receive a commission to get paid to give advice, that's a conflict of interest anyway. So whether or not it's a incorrect use of the word independent as it's defined, or whether it's a conflict of interest, either way it could be perceived as misleading. So where are you online? And this is probably a good task or a good thing to think about is, you know, have you Googled yourself, for example, to see where you come up? I guess the 4 key areas, and we covered this off early on when we started this section of, you know, what technologies do we use? And you know, having a list of these is probably a good idea in any business. So let's have a look at each area. Communication, obviously we could be online with phone calls, but luckily most of those don't get recorded or aren't visible. But you use your mobile phones for texts and emails. So a text could be a representation to a client, or could be kept by a client, so we need to watch what we text. I think Colin Craig's currently found out that keeping texts is, you know, some people do and show other people, get into trouble. We've then got email. Email obviously is, once it's gone, it's in the ether, and the other person has it, and its email provider has it. And obviously emailing newsletters and things would be another one that becomes online and could go in various places. While those aren't directly monitored by the FMA, you know, or the Commerce Commission, they definitely could end up in their hands. So whenever you're producing those, you'll need to stop and think about it. Video conferencing is very topical, with services like Sweetbox coming out now. And while that's generally one-to-one, it is recorded and will be kept on file, which can be a good thing, but we also need to make sure and remember that that then becomes an electronic record as well. So the same rules would apply. Marketing's probably the key one. Telemarketing's a big one. There are rules around unsolicited marketing from the Commerce Commission. So if you are hiring a telemarketing service or buying leads from a telemarketing service, then you're responsible for what those telemarketers are actually saying. So making sure that you sign off on scripts and ensure that those scripts are followed is a key part of any marketing activity. Website's the big one. Hopefully when people Google you, your website pops up, and we're going to have a look at a couple today just as examples. Videos on YouTube, they are there for everybody to see unless you've got a locked down channel, but once again, that's all the rules apply to those. Emails we've discussed already, which are your newsletters. Online adverts, as part of our My Compliance service at IDS, we offer, as part of that, we check or review any emails, websites, advertising that's being done. But it's quite funny how many times either on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn I see advisors pop up, and sometimes they are clients even who may have forgotten to pass it by us, and yeah, we see some interesting stuff said there. So obviously LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, all of that is potentially deemed, and you have to be careful too about personal use versus business use. So with Facebook, for example, I know that I have in my business clients who are on my personal Facebook page. So I guess you have to be cognizant of what you say, because people could be deemed that, you know, what you say on your personal Facebook, you could be saying as a financial advisor or a professional. And yeah, we've seen some interesting things pop up over time. I remember early on in Twitter, it used to give you a feed of what other people had been looking at on Twitter. And that was always interesting. I didn't know what you could do with donkeys, but found out some interesting stuff that other advisors looked at. But there you go. They've got rid of that function now, I think. Productivity technologies, most of those are in-house type stuff. I guess with your CRM systems, one of the things to watch there, while that's not a public or online facing item, do be careful with what records you do keep of clients electronically, because they are allowed to be searched or requested in the events of complaints or investigations. So yeah, if you have your own pet names for those difficult clients, don't write them down, don't keep them. It's not a good thing. In fact, we did have one interesting case where an advisor received an email from a client who purported to be from Germany, and it was a pretty short email, and it looked a bit suspicious. And he'd had some problems with spam and what do you call it? The Trojan horse type things going in and mucking up your systems. Anyway, so he'd just been through that, and he got this email, and the client said, "Oh, I'm moving over from Germany, and I'm looking to move to this wonderful little city, and I would like some health insurance. I've had heart problems, and I'm overweight, and diabetes, etc." The advisor, not being in a very good mood, fired back saying, "Yeah, come on over, it'll be wonderful, you'll love it over here. You can hang out with my other client, Hans Gruber, and you can do things with your German sausages together or something," and gave him the single finger salute in writing. And I guess the reason he did that was he didn't actually have a website, so he had no idea how someone could have got his email as a insurance advisor in Germany especially. What he didn't know was that that client had actually been onto a insurance company website, and they advertised all the people who had agencies with them. And so, of course, they went back to the insurance company with his reply and said, "Is this what your agents act like?" Now, that agency was cancelled pretty quickly by that company. Because he was an AFA, they also complained to the FMA and said that under Code Standard 2, he'd brought the industry into disrepute. And that's when he got in contact with us. We quickly got him to send an apology to the client, unreservedly, and we thought that would be the end of the matter, but I can tell you that was a 5-month investigation on whether he would have ended up in front of the disciplinary committee by the FMA or not over that one email. So yeah, little tip for young players there, watch what you say in email. And then customer service, obviously, what have we got there? Websites, potentially electronic documents and things. So there are a lot of points of contact where we're using the web or we're on the web with clients and potentially with the public, and obviously the regulators are watching. So what are the key risks? Data security we've talked about in the past. I guess things such as business continuity, brand damage, and what could potentially be expensive mistakes. And I guess from a business continuity point of view, we talk about technology staying up, not getting viruses and things like that. But it could be business continuity from, the FMA saying we want you to, cease and desist working business while we investigate or something like that. And brand damage, if it ended up that it was publicised by the Commerce Commission that, you had breached the Fair Trading Act or had been warned about it, that definitely wouldn't be a good outlook for you or your business. So how do we manage, I guess, the IT? I did have a video which I was going to play, but unfortunately we can't get playback on that. But if you were to jump onto YouTube and type in Commerce Commission, they have a website. They have a few YouTube videos. This one, which unfortunately I can't play, at the left end, it talks about like a staff member who put something up on a website, and then it goes all the way back down the line to management to go, well, how did this happen? You know, how did we end up with something on a website? Now, while most of us are in small businesses, we can be employing marketing people. We could be having our staff putting up posts, or we could be referencing other material on our websites or Twitter accounts or Facebook pages. And I guess the point is that as the director or as the advisor, you're responsible for whatever is put up in your websites or in your social media. So, you know, if you're going to be responsible for it, you need to have a process to ensure it's correct. So I've got a poll question here, which is, you know,
Okay, so let's launch the poll. So the question is, do you have a process or processes for?
Do you have a processes? That's a good question, Barry.
So I've reworded it. So I said, do you have a process for reviewing and approving all public-facing material?
Yep. It's a good question. I wish I'd written it that way.
Right, so 60.
And do you have a process for checking grammar on your presentations?
So 75, I'll give it 10 more seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. There must be a few people asleep. 7, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Close the poll. Let's have a share the results. Oh, hang on. Let's share the results. So Barry, the answer to that question is 63% apparently say yes, they do have a process for reviewing and improving public-facing material, and 38% said no.
Yeah. Okay. So cool. Well, and look, this hopefully gives you guys a bit of an idea of what we're looking for when we do. And a process is important. If you show you have a process, sometimes even if you get the wrong answer, the fact that you had a process is actually quite good. So it's a bit like the old maths teacher. You might get the wrong answer, but if you can show the workings and show that, hey, one slipped through the net or it went wrong, that's better than having no process at all. All right. In fact, in not having a process, that those unsubstantiated representations, potentially, if you haven't got a process for checking these things, then it could be stated that, you know, you're potentially breaching the Financial Markets Conduct Act by potentially having unsubstantiated representations made. So really important to have a process. So what I want to do now is I'm just going to flick out of this presentation, and I'm going to show you, we actually asked for a couple of volunteers, members of NZFAO. Hopefully, David, can you see that okay?
Yeah, that's fine, Barry. Yep, that's good.
Great. So Michael Cave has kindly suggested, in fact, Michael and I are doing a bit of work, and so one of the jobs I have to do is actually check his website. Now, he's volunteered for me to check that with you watching, so you get to see what I would be looking for, and hopefully what I'm looking for is probably the same as what the FMA would be looking for if they looked at a website or online presence. So Michael's team, they've put up this a lovely looking website. We've got a home page there. We've got Cave Financial. We've got qualified financial and insurance advice, which is good. I don't know what the qualification is, but it's qualified, which is good. So we'd have a quick look down here. So we've got an expert team, so of registered and authorised financial advisors and insurance brokers dedicated to safeguarding your personal income and growing your wealth. So we've got some statements there we're looking at. We would then come down and see what else we've got. We've got some things. We've got some subscribe to a mailing list and all rights reserved. So subscribing to emailing list is a good one where you're asking someone to give you some information. So if I just click on that, if you give me my email address, my name and what have you. Now, so one of the things here is what I can't see is what's going to happen to my email address, my names, and my name when I subscribe to this list. So I would expect to see, hey, we're going to use this or a definition or a statement. Potentially it could be considered, what Privacy Act statements you're going to put on there, that we promise to keep your information private and only use it for newsletters or contacts. So yeah, I would expect to, go away. I'd expect to see a statement there about what's going to happen with the person's information once they subscribe. So we'll just shoot back to the main, and in fact, I would also expect to potentially see a privacy statement or terms and conditions of use of the website on the website at the bottom as well, which is
just on that note, Barry. There is a handout in today's session which includes a sample terms and conditions for a website, so people can download it.
And look, they're pretty simple to put together. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, if we have a look in the services, what we'd be looking for there, see what comes up under insurance. So we've got some products we offer for sound insurance advice and insight. Get in touch. So that's pretty good. We've got some products there, testimonial there. So there's nothing too outrageous or statements there. KiwiSaver and investments, upsizing your savings, joining KiwiSaver, making regular contributions is only the first step. If you're not actively managing your fund, you could be missing out, which is good. Changes to the KiwiSaver scheme. So then we're looking at the ways KiwiSaver can grow your money. So we've got rates of different compounding rates, which is good. So don't just set and forget. So we're starting to make some statements here, and we have a disclaimer about the illustration, which is good, around past performance. So that's the type of thing we look. So whenever we're putting something up like that graph, we're looking for a disclaimer like that, and we've got the assumptions there as well. And we've even got a reference to where it came from, which is to generate KiwiSaver. Also, one of the things to think about is having a statement on there too that, hey, is that, don't take any of the advice on the website as personalised, or can't be deemed as personalised advice as well. Then we go to mortgages. Great advice, great decisions, biggest financial decisions. With K's brokerage service, you can be sure it's the right one. We're finance experts, not just brokers. So with that finance experts bit, we're going to be looking, when we look at the profiles, to see why they are experts. We've got advice. When do you need a mortgage broker? And there's some really good stuff there about how to do. So we specialise in walking you through new property for owner or investment purposes. So we've got a bit of advice around property purchase. We're talking a little bit about there as well. So that's all pretty good. So let's just jump into our team, which is, I guess, the next key part. So now we want to look at who we've got, and I'll jump into Michael. So we've got Michael. We've got a disclosure statement which can be downloaded, which is fantastic. We look to see that. And we talk a little bit about Michael there and his expertise. So that helps when we've mentioned, hey, we're an expert in what we do and why we do it, then we'd be looking for that statement there.
So a quick question on that one, Barry, about the disclosure. There does seem to be two different schools of thought about how you approach that. One is to have a statement on the site which says disclosure statements are available on request free of charge. And
that's actually the legal requirement.
Yeah.
So while we've got download disclosure statement there, the other way you can do it is obviously have a disclosure statement is available free and upon request. And theoretically, that should be on every piece of advertising of financial advice services.
Should that be on every page, or should it just be on
well,
maybe even in the footer of the site?
I would say it should be on the website, at least once. So I ideally, you'd expect to see it somewhere here on that front page, maybe down the bottom here. or as part of a general disclaimer. Definitely we look to see it when we talk about the team. So we've got that one there. So hey, if disclosure statements are available free and upon request, or you can download one now and click on there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the challenge with having the one downloadable on the site is then it's got to be maintained.
It does need to be maintained. So when we click on that, we'd be looking, now we've got this one here that was prepared in July 2011. So I guess the question there is that still the current one? And generally with primary disclosures, they are. Unfortunately, this one's not signed, so it's illegal. It's a $100,000 fine right there. But hopefully I won't tell the FMA. But those are the little things, we just get picked up on, and no one's got a fine. Now we can see here, we've talked about getting in touch, we've got the blog. So if we were to go into there, well, let's have a look. Cool, KiwiSaver and investments, always a good subject. So we've got talk about contributions and things like that. Now I know that because I follow Michael on LinkedIn, he does have the blogs going into LinkedIn as well. So let's have a look at the LinkedIn. So now we've got your profile here. Once again, I would be expecting to see the disclosure statement bit there as well. So if you look at these are posts that have gone into LinkedIn. So this could end up coming out in its own right without being attached to the website. So that's when we would, have a look through. Yeah, so then once again, the disclosure statement bit potentially needs to be on the bottom of each publication like that, because that could be seen in its own right or in its own without being attached to the website.
And the disclaimer around advice, personalised advice, presumably.
Correct. Yeah. So it might, if we're saying something, hey, we think this is a good idea, then we just need to say, hey, this is generic advice, not to be taken as personalised advice. And look, we're halfway there with the for sound advice. So that could be for sound personalised advice. Please contact us as well. But it looks really good. I really like the format and stuff of it. Now, if I just go back to, and we've got a Twitter account as well. And so yeah, we've got the website there. So once again, I'd want to see on there somewhere, hey, a disclosure statement is go away. Available free and upon request. I wouldn't expect to see that on every tweet as long as it's on the Twitter profile. Okay, so that would be the difference there. And then, see, look at that. What bloody Twitter, eh? Put stuff like that on your tweets. That just kills you, it really does. I'd hate to think what they put on mine. They keep reminding me about the size of my appendage all the time. I don't know how they know that, but there you go. Now, so that's just a quick overview, I guess, of what we would look at. We've also got Tony, Rick, Matt, and the team from FDG. Now, they've got a website up, which is worth a look at. I think they've done it really well, and that they go down into their services. So the same things we're looking for there would be around disclosure statements and statements they're making about the product. So if I just click into Tony and Matt, so we've got a description of them all there. Lovely photos. Geez, Sam looks like his dad, doesn't he? There's Barb, and then we roll on down. Now, so what I can't see there, once again, privacy statements, a disclaimer about any advice or the disclosure statements being offered there. So that would be something we'd be getting the team to do pretty quickly. Also, under financial services, and I'm going to pick on that one, and the reason for that is we've got KiwiSaver and investments in here. Now, I know the team refer on that business, but it doesn't state that clearly here. So it does say, hey, if we're looking for KiwiSaver, we can assist you with this. If you only have RFAs in your business, on the FSPR. So if we were to look up Financial Design Group on the financial service provider and no authorised financial advisor came out with that as one of the trading names, then that's potentially a gap. So that's one thing the team need to be looking at around that. So that just gives you a bit of an idea of the type of things that a regulator or a compliance officer would be looking for to say, we've made that comment, have we got the correct disclaimers on there? Have we said the word independent anywhere? I couldn't see it anywhere just over those views. But that's pretty much how it goes. And then to go through to the LinkedIn account and the Twitter account and the Snapchat account or whatever it is and find those other things. So, how do we get it right? I guess the first thing is to have a policy. The Commerce Commission do have a really good section on this, on putting a compliance policy together, and I've sort of cut and pasted some of the bits out of there. But pretty much, first thing to say is to all staff, hey, we've got a policy that nothing we do is going to mislead or deceive consumers. We're not going to make any false or misleading representations, and we're not going to abuse the trust of the consumers or exploit their lack of knowledge. All staff and contractors, and I say contractors because it's really important, if you're contracting out any of your social media activities, your blogs, your newsletters or anything like that, and I do know that newsletters get supplied sometimes by product providers and things like that, and you might assume that they've been ticked off from a compliance point of view. And they might have for a product provider, but that doesn't mean they're suitable for your financial advice service. So don't take it as read that it's 100% right. So managers are responsible that all staff and contractors understand the policy and understand the process. Having a process and control around that is also then going, well, how are we going to make these marketing decisions, and is that reviewed by management, I guess? And for most people, you are the staff and the management all in one, but you need to have one. We've got a little checklist here that you can use to go through, and while this is quite comprehensive, you might narrow it down into smaller chunks, but I guess these are the key things to look for. So, have the likely first impressions of our customers to the advertising being considered. And that's important, not just from a compliance point of view, but, if I was a non-industry person, what would I think of this article? Technical terms and trade jargon, we'll try and remove that as much as possible. So that goes along, I think, with that AFA and RFA, and you'll get an SOA, and VIPs get certain other things. Let's remove as much jargon as we can. Any time periods on any offers, and obviously there it states as if the product or service advertised is subject to specific legal legislation. So that's where the Financial Markets Authority, FAA and FMCA come into effect. Are we sure we're on the right lines of those requirements? If the advertising contains or refer any personal or business testimonials, are they genuine? Has the person agreed? And is the impression created by the testimonial also an accurate one? So if they say that you're the greatest financial advisor that ever lived, that probably might not be a good testimony to pop up. Are the statements we're making true? Also, so the bit about that is, have we substantiated the statements we're making? Have we got something on file that says this was the research or this was the evidence that we're relying on for the statements we're making? Consistent messaging is a good one. So when we're putting things across different platforms, are we saying the same things? Can we prove the claims? Any comparative pricing, so if you're getting into rates or returns or anything like that that you're stating, then be really careful to make sure they're correct, and any terms and conditions that apply. Things to watch out for at the moment, we've had people asking us recently about telemarketing for KiwiSaver, for example. Door-to-door knocking was something that was ruled out very early on in KiwiSaver. And there is unsolicited marketing rules that Commerce Commission have out, which means you actually have got some things that you need to oblige by then as well. We've taken it as a mixture of those sort of three things that I would suggest cold calling for KiwiSaver is probably not something you should do. And in fact, cold calling for financial any of the category 1 products is probably going to be difficult in some cases. So you need to watch out for cold calling. It's different if you're calling people that have been referred or you have permission to market to. So if they subscribe onto your website, for example, you are able to go back to them and talk to them about your services such as KiwiSaver. But if it's a cold call or whatever, I'd be careful with that.
Just a matter of whether subscriptions, Barry, one of the best practice these days seems to be a double opt-in. So I don't know how many people have double opt-in, basically whereby it avoids the situation where somebody can put somebody else's email address in there.
Correct.
So effectively, you get an email to say you or somebody subscribe to our newsletter. Can you please confirm that it was you?
That's it. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That would be a really good file structure, and that's pretty easy to set up with most systems where you can do an automatic. So they register, an automatic email goes to them saying, "Hey, just to confirm, you're happy to receive. Welcome aboard. Click here, and if you say yes, we'll send you our 5 top tips on insurance," or something like that. You know.
Yeah.
And that starts the train of, "Hey, I'm communicating. We're responsive," and it sets a really good brand image too. Responsiveness is really important, I think, these days in brand image.
Yeah.
And getting technology to respond on your behalf is very useful, rather than waiting for somebody to get to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, the checklist's there for you guys to go through. I guess if you started with a blank page, you should probably map out the marketing that you do, and the materials that you use in anything that's customer facing. Once you've identified all those materials, then have a process for review and checking. I know we seem to do them bit by bit. So the marketing material we might hand out at appointments could be different from what we're saying on the website, because we did that afterwards. And then, so consistency is really important, and don't overinvest, especially in print material, because things can change quite quickly, including regulations. I remember when we first started checking disclosure statements as part of our service for a few of the companies, we pulled one chap up who we said, no, the disclosure's wrong. You need to change this and change that. And he had just had 3,000 of them printed in nice glossy forms, which were now no good. So yeah, don't overinvest in printed material. So what are the next steps? I guess out of today, if we could suggest anything, it would be to review all customer-facing materials and apply that checklist to them. And then create a process for all future materials. And it could be as simple as, that someone in your team, if they're producing the material, has somebody else in the team do the checklist. If not, you may have an external marketing people. If you explain to them the rules that you are bound by under the Financial Advisors Act and Financial Markets Conduct Act, and ask them if they'll check in on those behalf, or look for a compliance sign-off. And if you're not sure, obviously get advice, be our key advice. And ladies and gentlemen, that is our Compliance Matters Being Safe on the Web presentation for today. Happy to take any questions if we've got a bit of time.
We are spot on 11 o'clock, so we did allow it to go through to 11:15 if necessary. So I will just cover off a couple of things, Barry. We talked about having terms and conditions on the website. Would that, from your point of view, include a privacy statement of some sort?
It should definitely include a privacy statement where the person has the ability to register on a website or pass information to you. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you should have something to say along the lines that, if they're going to email you, then, or contact you via that website and potentially provide, personal information, then yeah, there should be a statement on there.
Yeah, a privacy statement of some sort. Yeah, because there's a lot of sites these days do have, get in touch and we'll help you with your insurance, or if you'd like us to.
Exactly.
They ask for people to put in an email and so on and so forth. Okay, so there are a few questions.
And look, the thing is, they don't have to be over the top either. These are pretty simple. There's some pretty simple statements. It doesn't have to be like, when you sign up for Apple and they send you 70, they say, oh, click here to agree with terms, and you scroll through it it's 73 pages of terms and conditions. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about keeping it really simple and clear statements.
Yeah, that makes sense as well. Actually, on that topic, I don't know if you picked up on the fact that WhatsApp recently changed their terms and conditions. So if you use WhatsApp, they can now share your mobile data with Facebook.
Yeah, it's really actually quite scary. What can be done? I know people who were using Gmail accounts where, in fact, advisors who have contacted me for a review, if they email me from, advisorb@gmail, I can tell them they've failed right from that point on, because the terms and conditions of the free Gmail account are pretty much that Google can have a look and do whatever they like with whatever you have in there. So it's pretty
exactly.
scary.
Yeah, that is very scary.
Nothing is free. If it's free, then you're the product.
Yeah, exactly right. Okay, just a couple of other quick questions. Tom said, "Can we have a copy of the checklist?" Definitely, Tom. What I'll do is, I think, based on the information we've got here, I will actually prepare a little template that we can send out.
If you go to David, if you go to the Commerce Commission Fair Trading, I think it's compliance program. The checklist is actually a subset of that. So I cut it down a bit to make it, some of the stuff wasn't relevant to financial advisors, but yeah, you could easily cut and paste the questions in the present
I will find I'll find the link and make that sure that's available when we send that blog details. A couple of other things. Adam said, well, 64% of us think we have a public-facing process. Are we correct? And I think this is what is a surefire process, and I think you've probably outlined that with what you said. Hopefully that answers your question, Adam.
Yeah, anything that the public could get. So it could be a brochure, it could be a website, it could be a Twitter account. Anything that the public can see. It could be a shopfront window. That should all go through a review process to make sure we're not breaching any of those pieces we've discussed today.
Yeah. Okay. One final thing that Carol. Oh, actually, two questions. Carol said there's only me, so the process is me. I'm not necessarily.
And that's really cool. And I guess the thing to do there, Carol, is to make sure that you have a record of that process. So if you have a checklist on a piece of paper that says, "Here's my marketing checklist," and you go, "Cool, I'm about to do the blog," and you just tick off the checklist and sort of sign it off yourself and keep it, or do that electronically, have a form electronically in Word that you keep, and have a marketing folder that just shows that you went through that process. That's all you have to do if you don't send it elsewhere, as long as you're completely up to date with those requirements. So you can do it yourself. Because you are the advisor, the director, and compliance officer and HR officer all in one.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you're not sure, get advice.
Yeah, which was your last point, wasn't it? And on that topic, as part of your own service, Barry, the My Compliance service, that does, as you mentioned, does include a review of public-facing material and an offer to review stuff that's going to be posted in the public domain.
Yeah, so we have clients flicking our stuff through there, but also, if people had one-off questions, NZFAA members had one-off questions, or just wanted to get some clarification, please feel free to contact us. As long as it's less than 6 minutes, it's not billable.
Excellent. What I like to hear. A final question from Tom says, we mentioned video conferencing earlier on in the piece. Are there any specific guidelines or rules around video conferencing that you would suggest?
Imagine, especially if video conferencing is being recorded, then all the rules of, imagine that you're putting it in writing as a record would be the same. So I know it's mainly advisors who are recording it and keeping it, but then that becomes a record that could be checked later on, which is good in the way that's what we want, is an actual recording, because it takes the pressure of us having to put a whole lot of stuff in writing. We can summarize things a bit more from interactions like that. But I'd also suggest that, if if the recording is kept, if there's anything that was said in there, that becomes a record. So just treat it as you would any other record. So, for example, in a face-to-face meeting that's not being recorded, either by phone or by video conference, we can say some things, or that won't become a public record, or potentially a public record, but a recorded video conference potentially becomes a client record. So, in the event of an investigation or a client saying, "Hey, I want a copy of it," then they could get a copy of it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so that I think answers your final point there, Tom. In many respects, a video meeting is not dissimilar, I guess, to a telephone call.
Correct. Yeah, and it's the recorded bit that's the recorded bit's the bit you're being.
Yeah.
Anything that can be kept is essential. While it's not public facing, obviously, but recording video blogs and presenting those in YouTube, for example, then that's the same as anything written on a website or a piece of advertising.
Yeah, so the same principles apply.
Correct.
Excellent, Barry. Fantastic session. I really got a lot out of it. Hopefully the audience here got some takeaways that they can use in their practice. I will send out, when I send out the recording, I'll send out the link to the Commerce Commission checklist. As I mentioned, also there is a download today for those of you that don't currently have a terms and conditions on the website. There is a sample that you can use and adapt for your own particular purposes. Barry, thanks again for your time and the effort you put in here. I always enjoy the sessions. I always enjoy listening to what you've got to say, and I always come out with new insights. So thanks a lot. Have a very good weekend, everybody.
Got something out of it. Yeah, and have a great weekend and stay warm, guys.
Brilliant. Thank you, Barry. And if you want to find out when our next webinars are, just check onto our website. We will obviously announce them over the next week or two. I think there's one coming up later this month. Thanks, guys. Have a good weekend.
Cheers.